Recording in progress. And sorry, you guys have no choice whether to be recorded or not. So, all right, let's get going. I'm not waiting for anyone because this is going to be short and sweet and very, very simple. So, today's topic, boys and girls, is why you need to have the specific documents that we ask for when it comes to each transaction. I'm not going to go through, this isn't going through every document and what it actually means. I know Aaron's doing one next week. Next week, Aaron's going to be going through all the documents on the TC side to explain all the documents well. And there's also some recordings. There's also, wait, is there? Wait, hold on. We got it when we set this up. You got to do it just people just jump in and not admit people, not to admit people. Okay, cool. All right. There's Moss people. Good morning, everyone else who's just jumping in. This is being recorded, just so you guys know. Okay. Yeah, Wasada, what's happening, man? I haven't seen you in a while. Hi, Salama. How are you?
Hey, I'm Mark.
All right. So I'm getting going, getting rolling. If you guys can put yourself on mute, and if you guys have a question, just unmute yourself and chime in. Okay. So again, we're going through this, and this is going to be why.
Yes, I developed the capacity to drink a whole bunch of pills.
Put yourself on mute, please. Thank you. And if you have not put yourself on mute, go ahead and put yourself on mute, please. All right. All right. So I'm going to go through why we need these specific documents and understand the protection that it provides you guys with having these documents, give you some specific scenarios. Again, not going over specifically what they are. There's different videos on the YouTube channel, and Aaron's doing a class next week on going through the specific documents and the meaning of them. All right. So understanding why we need these things, and I'm referencing the checklist that we have here. These are in .loop, the checklist as far as what's needed. Here's why: to protect your ass. Okay, it's there to protect you. Every one of these documents is to protect you, protect your business, and protect the brokerage. All right, this is an incredibly litigious industry, being real estate. And when I tell you, I have been through scenarios before that the more documentation that you have, the better off it is for you. Okay, and it will protect you if things go bad and if things go to court or if it goes to the board or anything like that. So this is why it's imperatively important to have all these documents. And this is where more is better and not less is more. Okay, so going through the checklist again, these checklists are in .loop to give you a situation scenario about what exactly is needed. Someone's, I don't know who this is, 856-652-8083. I'm not sure his phone number that is. There's no name. Can you go ahead and mute yourself? Oh, I'm going to mute you. Ha, you're muted. Okay, so anyway, going through this, as far as let's start on the listing side. All right, on the listing side, you need the CIS, need that on the listing and buyer side. And I'm really enjoying watching Megan throw toys to her dog. That's awesome. That's great. So the CIS, guys, needed on the listing side. The CIS talks about agency relationships in the state of New Jersey, and that is absolutely required to give to your buyer or seller and have them sign off on that stating that you have given them a copy of the CIS. Okay, guys, I was at a procuring cause case this past year, and the CIS is always brought up. The question about the CIS, and the agent said that, yeah, I did give the CIS to the person. They didn't want the buyer didn't want to sign off on it. The client did not want to sign off on it because sometimes people think it's a contract and it's not, even though we explained to them that it's not. They did not want to sign off on it, and the agent said, well, I gave it to them. And then someone on the panel said, where do you have in your notes the day and time that you gave it to them? And we were like, huh? What do you mean? And they said, yeah, if you give it to them, you have to notate somewhere that you gave them the CIS. And if you did that, that certainly would have helped. That person's cause. Okay, so you got to give the CIS to someone. That is law. You need to do that. Next, consent to dual agency. The dual agency is incredibly important to give and have them sign off, and you need to have that because you never know when that situation is going to arise where dual agency may come into place. And need to understand that the dual agency form states specifically in there only if the opportunity arises. So when you're explaining to your client, guys, I could be a dual agent, but only if I'm showing another property that's listed by Prime, and or only if I am getting the buyer for your listing. All right, whether they contact me via social media, open house, if they call me through a website, anything like that, you got to have that signed and get them to sign in the beginning. You are required to have that. Guys, when I talk about requirements, there's two forms of requirements. One is for the state and one is for us. Okay, so every one of these things on this checklist is required and is a requirement of the state and a requirement of prime. And you should also make it a requirement. It's of your business. This is the biggest thing, guys, that this is your business. As an independent contractor, you are the business owner. Tell you guys all the time, you are a business owner. You cannot sit there and say and profess that, yes, I'm a business owner, and then not do the things that you have to do to be a business owner. It is all encompassing, and you have to make sure you are doing all of this. And this is a big part of you being a business owner. So consent to dual agency, get that signed. That is a requirement. I don't care what board you're in. I don't care what MLS we're in. I don't care where the property is. That is what is required. Okay. Cynthia, my God, Cynthia, iPad 3. How many iPads you got? Listing contract. Okay. Sorry. Someone asked me if I had ADD the other day. I don't think that I do, but maybe sometimes I do. Don't look at me like that, Megan. Let's go back to listing. So listing contract. Okay. You list a property. Yes, you need to have a listing contract. There has to be a start date. Oh, Lauren, there's a little laughy thing. You can do emojis on this? Get out of here. I didn't know that. Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Soundtrack.
Huh? Soundtrack. Okay. Listing contract. Sorry. So you need to have the listing contract. There has to be a start date, an end date, and compensation in the listing contract. Okay. And it has to be very, very specific. Start date, end date, and compensation there. What the compensation is up to you. It is your guys' business, but there must be start date, end date, and compensation. If not, it is not a valid listing contract. That lays out the terms of what the listing is. If there's anything specific, anything different you need to put in there, make sure that is written into the listing contract. Okay. And that listing contract needs to be signed by the person who has authority to sell the property. Okay. This came up a couple of days ago. Someone, little scams going on out there, trying to sell property. They didn't have authority to sell the property. And that did not go over well with the person who does have authority to sell the property. If in this day and age, you are listing a property and you're doing it virtually with someone who may not be here, you need to get them on a Zoom with valid ID and verify the identification and verify the documentation that says they are the person who has the authority to sell that property. Okay. So if it's an estate, if someone's the executor, executrix, anything like that, get that documentation that says they have the authority to sell, get them on a Zoom, get them on a FaceTime, get a copy of their ID and validate that person. You need to do that. That is completely imperative. Okay. So copy the listing contract, guys. All this stuff stays in dot loop as well. I'm going to go through dot loop in a second with you. All right. The seller disclosure form. Here's the deal with disclosure form. Is it required to have a seller property disclosure form in the state of New Jersey? The answer is no. Okay. It is not a requirement to have a property disclosure form in the state of New Jersey. Is it a requirement? Should you have one? Is it a requirement for your business and for here to have a seller property disclosure form? The answer is yes. And here's why. It will protect you, guys. It will protect you. It will protect your seller. 9 out of 10 times when there's a lawsuit in Jersey in real estate, it is because of lack of disclosure or something fraudulent with disclosure. I don't care what type of property that it is, you need to have a disclosure form. If it is a property that may be in a state and there's an executor or they never lived there, have them sign off on that disclosure form and write on there, property was left to me, I am the executor of the state, never occupied the property, never lived in the property, don't know anything about the property. Great. Now they're at least attesting to the fact that they know nothing about the property, and then a buyer can't come back and say, well, you didn't tell me this, you didn't tell me that. Now we have we have a history of things in writing that says, okay, I told you I didn't know anything about the property. I don't know what to tell you. Okay. Have that done. If you're dealing with someone who's doing a flip, have the investor do a disclosure form. Have them do that. That way it's disclosed, upgrades that they did, things they did, if they did any additions, renovations that required permits, if they got them, if they did not. You got to have this done. It's going to protect you, because if there is no disclosure form, then it's going to be really bad for your seller. Okay. Because what will happen when you're dealing with litigation is that one of the things the attorney is going to put in the suit is going to be fraud. Well, if you have a seller that didn't put anything in writing about what they know or what they don't know, doesn't help them out too much. They need to put in writing what they know, what they don't know about the property. Okay. And have them sign off on that. And you as the listing agent sign off on it as well. It has been asked in cases that I have been present for, guys, if the agent signed off on the disclosure form. You as the agent are not taking liability to the work that was done in the property. You're just stating, I reviewed the disclosure form and to the best of my ability can validate it. That way you as the agent they can't come back and say, well, you knew this, you didn't know that, you're signing off on it, that look, to the best of my ability, which is going around doing a visual inspection, this is what I saw. Okay, great. You're off the hook. Okay. Get it in writing. You want the seller disclosure form. Again, I don't care if they didn't live there. I don't care if they know anything about the property, then write on the seller disclosure form. They know absolutely nothing about the property. Make sense? Guys, if you have any questions about this as I'm going through, unmute yourself and ask the question. We'll address it then. Okay. Disclosure of lead-based paint, if available. If the property was built prior to January 1st, 1978, you need a lead-based paint disclosure form. Okay. Need to have that signed off on. They need to initial, if they have any reports or any knowledge or anything dealing with lead-based paint, sign off on it. That is made a part of the contract for sale. When you list the property, get that at your listing and add that to the agreement of sale when you're signing the contract. Okay. Alliance abstract, affiliate business, that is absolutely required by RESPA. Okay. Prime has interest and ownership in Alliance. That form has to be signed by all parties, seller and or buyer. I don't care if they're using Prime or Alliance or not. Hopefully they are, but if they're not using Alliance, that is still required to be signed. That is a disclosure statement. We have to disclose to them that Prime has an interest in Alliance. That is required 100% of the time in every singular transaction that you're doing. Okay. Next, wire fraud notice. Please, 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 I beg of you, get the wire fraud notice signed. It removes liability from you, stating that you have told people, don't wire anything. Don't wire any money. There are a tremendous amount of scams, guys, that are going around for wire fraud. And it has happened on the agent side. It has happened on the title side. It's happening. These scammers are going in and they're masking their email to make it look like it came from Prime or it came from Alliance or it came from someone else involved in the transaction. And they are saying, wire the funds to here. That is not how it works. That is not how it works. You got to let them know, guys, do not wire anything. If you ever get an email or any notice about wiring any funds, contact me immediately. Immediately. Okay. Guys, I do have a cyber policy in the E&O program. I pay more for that, and we pay a lot for it on the Alliance side as well. So we're spending a lot of money to make sure that you guys are protected when it comes to wire fraud and cybersecurity. And again, we're not charging you guys for that, just so you know. Okay. All right. But you have to get the wire fraud notice signed, buyer side and seller side. Okay. So listing docs, any questions on the listing doc side as far as what is required and why it is required? No? Okay. Moving on. Buyer side. Okay. This is where it's going to be a couple things really important here. CIS, obviously, talking about CIS required buyer and seller. If you give that to someone and they do not sign it, make sure you make a notation in your phone or in a notepad somewhere, day and time. Hand delivered CIS to Mr. Buyer. They did not want to sign. The date is 8/22 at 11:06 a.m. That way you at least have some kind of recording of it and some kind of notation about when you gave that CIS to your possible client. Dual agency, got to have that signed. That only applies when you take your buyer into a property listed by Prime. It's got nothing to do with taking a buyer into your listing. It's a brokerage agency agreement. It's got to deal with everything or anything that's listed by an agent at Prime. If you do not have a dual agency agreement signed, you cannot take the buyer into any property listed by Prime, period, because they do not give you consent. You do not have consent or authorization to take them in there. So get that signed, explain to them, guys, this is only if the opportunity arises and I take into a property that's listed by someone at Prime, and then dual agency will kick in. Okay, get them to sign that. I'm going to go back to the buyer agency in a second. Alliance abstract, the ABA, again, buyer side, seller side, required all the time. I don't care if you're working with a buyer or seller. RESPA requires us to have that signed. It is a disclosure statement. We are disclosing that Prime has interest in Alliance. Okay. And if we're doing seller processing for you, or if we're doing the title side, we've got to have that signed 100% of the time. Okay. Same thing, wire fraud, get that signed 100% of the time. Wire fraud notice, get it signed by every person that you're dealing with. It is so screwed up and so sad what's happening with the wire fraud today. And I'm telling you that there are situations where people are wiring $250,000 and that money is gone. That is their payment for the house. They have wired that out to people, and not anyone here, not anyone Prime Reliance, but it has happened where people have wired $250,000 thinking they're sending it to the title company, and it was not. It was a scammer. They were hacked, and that $250,000 is gone. They can't get it back. Not getting it back. They got to somehow find out who it's sent to and go sue, but good luck with that. Okay. So if you got to make sure you let your client know if they ever get a notice to wire, be in contact with you right away. Okay. All right. Back to exclusive buyer agency. This is such a topic of discussion and debate all the time. Here's the reason why I require buyer agency contracts to be signed 100% of the time. We've had people join Prime that were other brokerages, and we've been told that, well, they didn't make us have them signed ever at all. I don't accept that. I won't accept that. I want it signed 100% of the time, because that lays out the legal relationship that you have and that the brokerage has with your buyer. If someone unmute yourself and answer this question for me, please. If you do not have a buyer agency you're working with a buyer, you do not have a buyer agency contract signed, who do you represent legally?
No one. It can go anywhere.
Anyone else?
The seller.
Salam is correct. You legally represent, the brokerage legally represents the seller as a sub-agent. That is an agency relationship, sub-agency. If you are showing a property to a buyer and you don't have a buyer agency contract signed, you don't get it signed, you don't ever get it signed. You legally represent the seller. The brokerage legally represents the seller as a sub-agent. And if something goes bad and it goes to court, you will be asked about a buyer agency contract. If you do not have it, it will come up that why were you going against the seller and not working on the seller's behalf when you were representing them as a sub-agent? Okay. Seen it, been there, done that, guys. I've seen that happen. You need to have a buyer agency contract signed. Here is the other reason we're talking about buyer agency. Okay. When you look at, people talk about procuring cause and buyer agency, and well, did you have a buyer agency contract signed? The buyer agency contract has nothing to do with procuring cause whatsoever. It doesn't. The buyer agency contract is a contract between the buyer and the brokerage. Okay. It doesn't have anything to do with procuring cause. And if your buyer goes and buys a property with another realtor, when you have a buyer agency contract signed, it doesn't mean you're getting paid as an agent. What it means is that if the buyer agency contract is signed, what it means is that the brokerage now has to go sue the buyer to collect a commission. Now, guys, all due respect, but I'm not going to go spend $15,000, $20,000 to collect a commission that's $1,500 or $2,000. It doesn't make any sense. I've never seen that done in force unless the commission was like $35,000. Then it would make sense. Okay. That's where that comes into play. Here's the other part that's so critical and so crucial when we talk about ethics and violations, because there would be an ethical standpoint going against the other agent, that if the buyer agency contract was signed and then that buyer went to another agent to buy a property, that agent is under a duty and an obligation to ask if they're working with another agent. And if they say yes, the agent cannot do anything until that agency relationship is killed. And if they do proceed with the buyer, then they are in violation of the code of ethics. Okay, that is an ethical violation. If you have a buyer agency contract signed with a buyer and the buyer goes to an open house, puts in an offer with another agent, that is an ethical violation to the other brokerage, or against the other brokerage and against the other agent. However, if you do not have a buyer agency contract signed and your buyer that you've been working with for 3, 4, 5 months goes and puts an offer in with another agent, they have not committed an ethical violation. When you look at the code of ethics and the standards of practice, which is here, I advise you guys read it over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay. Everything here talks about agency relationship. Well, the buyer agency agreement starts and commences that agency relationship. If you do not have an agency relationship, it is not an ethical violation. It may be a moral violation, a common sense violation. I agree with that, but there's no standing on an ethical violation because an agency relationship was not created. The CIS does not create an agency relationship. It doesn't. Listing contract and buyer agency are what creates the agency relationship. So if you do not have a buyer agency contract with that buyer and they buy with another agent, no ethical violation. Again, moral violation. We question agents' morals in this business anymore. But it's a moral violation, but it is not an ethical violation. You can't go after them for a violation of code of ethics. Does that make sense, guys? Please ask any questions on that because this is a hot point and has been for years and years and years and years and years. Here's the other part. As things are changing with the real estate industry and the scope of what it is, listing agents or sellers pay commissions to buyers and everything. There's the class action suit that's out there. We saw the bright change it to where there doesn't have to be compensation offered in the MLS. When you have a buyer agency contract that has a compensation in there, look, if you're offered $1 or if you're offered 0 cents as a commission in the MLS, you can go, that's where the buyer, it's on the buyer to pay you. Okay. So that's why having compensation in the buyer agency contract is critical. And when I do my buyer agency contracts, hold on one second, Lauren, I'll get to you in a sec. When I do my buyer agency contracts, I always put in there as far as commission 2 to 3%. I'm not going to do anything for less than 2%. I explained to the buyer that if the commission being offered to me is less than 2%, you have to make up the difference. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. I'll take 2. It sucks, but I'll take 2. On the co-op side, it's, it is what it is. I'm not going to impede the sale of that, but anything less than 2, I'm going to have the buyer make it up. If you do not have a compensation there, A, you don't have a valid agreement anyway, and B, you ain't going to get paid. Okay. Yes, Lauren, you raised your hand. I had a question. Hello. I see you're unmuted. Okay, can't hear you.
Hear me now?
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Can you hear me
Yep.
now? Hi. So what happens in the event where like a buyer was being deceptive and they had an agency agreement signed with someone else and they also had an agency agreement signed with you?
So say that again. The buyer had an agency agreement with another brokerage.
Yeah, but they also signed one with you. Like, what if
Okay.
they lied about it?
So and this is where keeping a history of everything comes into play. So if you're meeting with a buyer and they say they had a relationship or they don't have one, get that in writing from them so they can put in writing, no, I do not have a relationship with any other agent. Because what it's going to come down to is I'm going to sit there and I say, well, Lauren, did you ask if they were working with another agent? And you can say, yes. All right, well, where's that in writing? I need to be able to understand that. So if you are working with someone and they say, no, they don't, they may have shown some properties or looked at other properties with another agent, but I didn't sign anything. Great. No problem. Put in writing, hey, Mr. Buyer, just to follow up with you that when we met, you said you did not have an agency relationship with another brokerage. I appreciate that. We can work together. Okay. Get that in writing, put that in writing that you had that conversation, that's what they explained to you. Okay. On the flip side of that, we'll meet buyers at open houses or just in the course of everyday life that they said, yeah, I'm signed with another agent and that agent sucks. What do? You need to send, before I can do anything with you, you need to send written termination of that relationship to the other brokerage. So in the buyer agency contract, it states it has a timeline. It's for X amount of days.
Totally forgot I had
Days.
a Zoom meeting.
Can you go ahead and mute yourself? Laughing about the Zoom meeting?
Because I'm a realtor and I forgot that my broker, we had a meeting.
Hey, Lanika, Zoom, mute yourself, please. Thank you. So, you need to send notice to them. The buyer has to send notice to the other agency that they are terminating the relationship. Because if you look at the buyer agency, it says from today until 4 months from now, or until 3 days after written notification is sent to terminate the agreement. Okay, that's the synopsis of what it says, the exact verbiage. But once that buyer sends written notification, the buyer agency contract will effectively be terminated 3 days from that.
Got it.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Now here's the other part.
Thank
Here's
you.
the other kicker. You're welcome. Here's the other kicker you need to be aware of. I would get a copy of that agency, that buyer agency contract, because some people kind of do their own that removed that 3-day termination clause. There are some people and some brokerages out there that do not use the statewide agreement and they have done their own that removes that 3-day termination clause. If they don't have a 3-day termination clause, you got to tell the buyer, look, I can't help you out. I can't do anything with you until you get some kind of written release from the brokerage that you're released from this agreement. 9 out of 10
Okay.
brokerages, 9 out of 10 people are using the statewide agreement. Okay. Some people do not do that. All right.
Yeah, because that's where it just gets a little fuzzy with like the internet leads, you know?
What's that?
I said that's where it gets a little fuzzy with the internet leads. Like sometimes they're like, "Oh, I'm working with someone," and
It is.
they're
So
like,
they'll tell you that they're
"Have you
working with
signed
someone.
anything?" Yeah.
Right. But this is where, again, guys, we have to, because of that, having everything in writing is so critical that if you have that conversation with a person, follow it up in writing, whether it be a text message or an email or something. Hey, just to recap our conversation, it was great talking to you. I understand from the conversation with you, you do not have an agency relationship with another agent, correct? You do not have anything in writing with another agent, and get that response. Take that, put that in the loop, print that out and print that in the loop. So you have a recording of it. You have the record of that. You have a history of that. Okay. And I'm telling you, don't just rely on letting it sit in your phone, because if your phone dies and crashes and you lose it, you're going to lose that. Okay. If there's something pertinent to the agreement that you feel that you need to have in writing, print that out, put that in the loop and keep that there. That way it'll stay there. Make sense?
Thank you.
You're
Yep.
welcome. Okay. Now, so everyone clear on buyer agency and why it is needed 100% of the time. Okay. You do not want to get in a lawsuit and go to court where you represented the buyer and you do not have a buyer agency contract, because your agency relationship then reverts back to the seller. And I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it asked. I have seen it when the attorneys are sending out all the documentation and it's great. Send me your buyer agency contract. And if the agent says, I don't have it, that ain't good. Okay. All right. So next, moving on to contract documents. Contract for sale. Yeah, needed. Okay. Need that one. Any addendums? Need it. Home inspection report, termite inspection report, radon inspection report, well, septic, pool, any inspection report. Get that in the loop. Okay. Have a copy of that. Have that in the loop. Any addendum whatsoever. I don't care if it's initiated in a dot loop or someone sending it somewhere else. Get that addendum in the loop. You need to have those addendums. Okay. You can't rely on sellers or buyers having full files that they're keeping everything. Most people are a freaking mess. And you know what? Most agents are a freaking mess, guys. This is why you got Sarah here, to keep you guys not being a mess. We're going to talk about that one in a second too. Okay. So any addendum, yes, it's relating to the transaction. Get that in the loop. You need to have that. Request for repairs. Yes, you need to have the request for repairs. And you need to have, if it's anywhere where it's going back and forth, making sure it's coming from the seller or the buyer. Do not ever yourself do a request for repairs for your client. You can type it up. I type it up plenty of times because I know how to word the request for repairs. I'm not going to send over a request like, give me all this stuff. I want everything done. Come on. No, I'm going to type it up nicely. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, for allowing me to do your home inspection, the home inspection property on Wednesday, 8/13, whatever the date is. I appreciate it. And not, look, your home's a sack of shit and I want everything done. Okay. So I can do that, but then I'm going to send that to the seller or to the buyer and have them sign off on it and have them sign it. Okay. You got to understand how dot loop works too. Dot loop has a history of everything in dot loop. So when you send a document to someone, there's a history of it. When they sign it, there's a history of it. That's all in dot loop as well. So we can track the history of all the documents going back and forth, but always have your buyer and seller sign off on what it is they're doing. All right. Any response to any request for repairs, have that in there too. You need to have that. If there is no inspection, if it is being waived, what do we need? A waiver. Shush. Anyone?
No, nobody else.
Go ahead,
What
Chrissy.
Sarah said,
If there's no inspection, if they're waiving inspections, get the waiver signed and initialed by your buyer. Excuse me. Get that signed and initialed by your buyer, that they are waiving the inspection, because if you don't, and a year down the road, the buyer brings a lawsuit against everyone because they didn't hold on one second, Chrissy, because something went to crap or they found something and they come back and there's no waiver that's signed. Don't think they're going to sit there and say, yeah, I signed it. I signed it. They're not going to say that if there's no recording of it. So get the waiver signed of the inspection. Yes, Chrissy,
How about if it's an as-is property?
get a waiver and sign.
Don't need it.
I mean, you still need the wait.
You can
If it's
inspect
as
it.
is, they're waiving their inspections. Okay, they're waiving inspections, get them to sign the waiver of the inspection. Have that in the loop, have that documented. Absolutely got to have that. Okay. Make sense, guys? Any questions on that? Okay. CO, smoke certs. Yes, guys, it's a part of the transaction. Whether if they're not getting a CO, if they have a CO, get that, have a copy of the CO. Everyone's given a copy of the CO. Marked up title. When title is done, these are part of the documents that you get from the title company. Get a copy of the marked up title, keep that in the loop, keep that as a part of the file. The closing statement, the ALTA, the HUD, have that. You got to have it, have the signed one. The final walkthrough form. Yes, yes, yes. Every single time, have the final walkthrough done. Have that signed. That form is in .loop. That's the final walkthrough form. The buyer saying that they walk through the property and they agree to take it the way that it is. And they're happy and satisfied with it. If they're not satisfied with it, have them sign off on there what they're not satisfied about. But we need to know that's being done. Okay. Here's the other part. Do not ever do the final walkthrough for your client. You'll get nailed. Yes, Kristen.
Oh, I have a client coming from Florida. They're making settlement today in Florida and they purchased a house obviously here.
Mhm.
So I'm not doing a final walkthrough with them. What do I do? Wait till they come back? Can I
So
do
if you have
that?
someone that's out of town who can't make it and you're going to go there, then I would FaceTime them. I'd FaceTime them, get them on video. Okay.
Yeah, they don't have iPhones. They're older people. They can't even sign a document on .loop. It's a big clusterfuck.
Okay.
But
Then
I'm
you
saying,
need to get
can I-
something- You need to get something in writing from them, saying that they have waived their final walkthrough. They're not in town and you're not doing it for them. Get something in writing. You always got to get something in writing that covers your butt. Okay.
Right.
Larry knows this very, very well, being an attorney, to have every single thing in writing. You've got to cover your ass. Get everything. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. Am I correct with that, Larry?
Somebody like that.
Yes, you don't want it to come down to he said, she said.
Yeah.
So, yeah, get it in
Thank you very
writing.
much, Larry. Appreciate it.
Oh,
Get in writing, get something, get an email to them. Hey, you have to talk about the final walkthrough. I understand you're out of town. You're waiving the right to your final walkthrough.
Can I wait until they come here? They'll be here in like 2 days.
The ones we
No,
met.
you
when
gotta
we
get it before
first looked
closing.
at the
If
place.
it's after closing, it doesn't make any difference whatsoever.
Remember,
True. Okay.
Right.
she's a great
Like-
school, was a great school teacher.
Got it. So, guys, the final walkthrough, yes, get that 100% of the time. Okay, 100% of the time. Okay. Questions on any of that stuff so far? I'm not going to keep you guys here all day. Okay. Here's a couple other things too. So when it comes to .loop, guys, you need to be organized in .loop. In .loop, you have the ability and the capability in .loop to have separate folders in .loop. Listing docs, contract docs, settlement docs, as all different folders. You need to be more organized in .loop. Okay. Sarah spends a lot of time hunting down documents, and she should not have to spend any time hunting down documents, because every agent here, every agent across the real estate platform is an independent contractor, which means you own your own business. And I'm telling you, having all this stuff done and together and your files tight will save your ass. And it's a nuisance and a pain in the butt until it comes time to where you need it. And when you need it, you are going to wish that you took the time doing it. Guys, I'm telling you, and I speak from experience, having dealt with lawsuits before and litigation and depositions, the more documentation that you have, the better it is going to be for you. This is such a vital aspect of your business and being a proper business owner. It's not even funny. And if Sarah asks you for documents, here's the thing. You may ask her, why do I need this? That's fine. And then get it done, because she is your last line of defense. She is your last line of defense. If you get sued and you lose because you don't have all these documents, sorry, guys, I ain't paying. I'm not paying the fine for you. You need to have this. You need to have every frigging document, because there's so many people that are in any singular real estate transaction and so much that's going on. And here's the other part. Text messages hold up in court. Facebook messages hold up in court. Anything in writing will hold up in court. So if you have text communication back and forth with clients and or agents, whoever's involved in the transaction, you feel that's pertinent to the transaction, screenshot it, print it, put it in the loop. Keep that text message, but keep it in dot loop. Don't just rely on keeping it on your phone. My phone this morning, when I woke up, it wasn't working. I don't know why. I have no idea why. I think Rob's phone just died. So Rob lost some stuff the other day. We don't know why or what's going to happen. I don't know what the hell. I didn't do anything with my phone, but I'm like, Christ, if I lose this, I have a lot of stuff that I've lost. Okay. They're all text messages with you guys and text chains with you guys, not transactions. But for you guys doing transactions, if there's something, if you're having a communication, screenshot it, print it, keep it in the loop. That's where it needs to be. And I'm telling you that as you're going through your transaction, keep the loop up to date, because if the state walks in and says, print me out transactions 1 through 10, if there's nothing in there, guys, that's on you for not having it in there. You got to have it in there. And when the agreement's signed, put it in there. Take the 30 seconds out of your life. If it didn't get signed in dot loop and it was emailed to you, take the 30 seconds out of your life and get it in dot loop and put it in there. It will make your life a lot easier. It'll make Sarah's life a lot easier. And I'm telling you, she is your last line of defense. And that's why she spends an immense amount of time policing documents, and she shouldn't have to do that. She really shouldn't have to do that. These are all the documents that are needed. And if there's something in your head where you're like, should I have that? If you have to ask yourself that question, the answer is always yes. It is better to have more in there than to have less. Text conversations, Facebook message conversations, you can screenshot that, print that out, upload that to the loop. Emails, save the email, print it, put it in the loop. And I'm not talking about just archive it in your emails. Print it, print a PDF and save it to the loop. Get it in the loop. Everything needs to be there. If the state walks in and says, give me this, I need to be able to go in and print out all the docs or show the investigator transactions 1 through 10. And if stuff's not there, it's not going to go well and everyone's going to get fined. And I don't want that. And you guys don't want that either. Okay. Now, if you have a verbal conversation with someone, it is so crucial and imperative. Follow it up with an email, follow it up with a text. Hey, Chrissy, just to recap our conversation. This is what we talked about. Thank you very much. Boom. Take that, upload it, print it, upload it. Okay. Verbal conversations are great. Not enough people use this. More people should use this to have a conversation. Follow it up with something in writing, because what's in writing is what will hold up in a court. You always have to play the what if game. What if this goes to crap? What if this goes to court? What if it goes to court 2 years down the road? I thought everything was great. You don't know what's going to happen. You have no idea what's going to happen. What happens if this person all of a sudden sits there and does something to their house, and now they see an old well, or there's an old tank, or there's a cesspool in the property that we didn't know about? You need to have the files tight. You need to have everything in writing so that if it comes back to you, you can say, here's everything, I'm good. And you can sleep well at night knowing that you're involved in a lawsuit and you are protected because you had all of your documentation together. Okay. It's very frustrating on our end, chasing down all the documentation and explaining why over and over and over again. Guys, it's not to be a ball buster and it's not to be a pain in the ass. I'm telling you, we do this to protect you. It's like we're mom and dad over here, right? We do this to protect you guys, and we want you protected when it comes to your business. And this is 100% your business, guys, but we are here to protect you. And I'm telling you that the more documentation that you have, the better off you are. More is absolutely better. If you ask yourself a question, should I have this? The answer is always emphatically 100% yes. Get it in writing, get it in the loop, have it as a part of your file. You should have everything in your loop, and you should also have, whether it be Google Drive or Dropbox or something that you guys use, where you have everything for all your files too. I have records of all my transactions over the last 6 years. I have to keep everything for 6 years for every transaction, which means so do you guys being an independent contractor. It's your business. Everything that closed, you keep for 6 years. If the transaction didn't close, you need to have documentation for 6 months, for at least 6 months. 6 months is the minimum. So if you're working with a buyer and you're putting in offers and nothing came to it, and if nothing came to fruition, or that buyer bounced out, or whatever it is, you need to keep documentation of that for a minimum 6 months. Okay. So we're not trying to make things difficult on you. You're making it more difficult on yourself by not having your loops tight and not having documentation that you need to be a business owner. This is called being a proper business owner. We talk about it all the time. A lot of what we want to talk and teach here is about being a business owner. The more documentation you have, the better off it's going to be for you as a business owner. And you're going to learn a lot more. You're going to see a lot more. You're going to protect yourself a lot more, which is protecting your assets and protecting your revenue, protecting your income. Okay. Last thing you want to do is think you got all this money and then 2 years down the road, you get popped with some lawsuit and you lose because you don't have documentation. Okay. All this makes sense, guys. Okay. Does anyone have any questions before we cut this? No? Okay. So guys, Aaron, keep an eye out. Next week, Aaron is doing another training class, and that is on the documents and going through the documents and the meaning of them and explaining all the documents. Again, we have videos on this on the YouTube channel. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put this on the YouTube channel as well. Don't be hesitant to share. We'll put it in the Facebook group. I appreciate you all taking the time being here on this today, because if there's ever any questions on what you should have, what you should not have, call, ask, email, text. That's fine. We don't matter about that. What we don't want to do, what we don't want to happen is you guys have a closing and then we go into the loop. There ain't shit there. That's not okay. It is a living transaction. Your business is a living, breathing creature. Nurture it, take care of it every single day. That transaction is a living, breathing creature. You have to take care of it, which means you got to keep it up to date. Keep all those documents on there as you're getting it. It's in real time. It's not, okay, I'll close and then I'll upload everything. That's not how it works. That's not what the business is about. And that's not what the state investigators going to want to hear when they walk in and say, I had a complaint filed based on this transaction. Can you give me all the documents? And we jump in a dot loop, and that is bare. That's not going to be good. And I'm going to be very upset about that. And you're going to be very upset about it, because the fines that come down, the penalties that come down is going to be very bad. And guys, it could be that your license gets suspended. You have to pay a fine that is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Okay. Thousands of dollars. Could be your license gets puts on probation for 6 months. You have to take classes, whatever it is. But that's why it's so imperative to have your paperwork ironclad, have the loop tight, have it together. Any questions on it, you call, ask Sarah, ask me, and we'll help you out with it. But it is on you guys to make sure all the documentation is there. Okay. So guys, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for taking the time. I'll get this recorded or upload it to YouTube. I'll pop it on in the Facebook group. I have it on the YouTube channel. You can go back. If there's any questions, let me know. All right. Everyone good?
Thanks, Mark.
All right. You got it.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time, guys. I'm going to stop recording. Everyone have a great day. We're always here if you need anything. All right.
All right, thanks,
Thanks.
Mark.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Thanks.
Take care.